Okay, we're going to paint our Thanksgiving tiered tray set. First of all, I apologize for the lighting. There's going to be a lot of shadows. I try never to have overhead lighting, but it is snowing right now and it is so dark outside. So there's going to be, the coloring is going to look off and there's going to be a lot of shadows. If this is your first tier tray kit, the first thing you need to do is cover your workspace. So you can either open up the box that your craft came in or just lay some paper down. I suggest like almost like the painter's paper. It needs to be thicker because you're going to be dabbing. That's why I suggest the box. That works really well. I'm limited workspace because I'm going to be painting multiple kits today. So I just have my little scrap cardboard here. So the first thing, I like to paint my tier tray kits by color. Some people like to do it piece by piece and just follow the picture, and that's okay. You just have to work quickly so that your wedges don't dry out. So since I'm doing it by color, the first thing I'm gonna do is brown. So I've got my pieces that are brown here. I have the frame to the thankful sign. I've got the utensils, I did those brown. The pie crust, the other pie crust for the banners, the little ring that came with, which piece was it? Oh, the tag with the utensils, and the cutting board. So the first thing you're gonna do is get your baby wipe out. If your baby wipe has dried out, then you can either run your hand underneath some water and then just kind of squeeze it on the wipe, or just get like a spray bottle and spritz it with water. You don't want it to be dripping wet, but it definitely needs to be damp. Otherwise, it's not going to spread the paint well. So you're gonna have your little paint pots. Again, I have many kits to paint today, and so I have a mess on this table. I generally have everything cleaned and organized, but that is not happening today. So you're going to wrap. I like to work at a corner because I like to keep one side clean, and I'll show you why later. So just wrap the damp baby wipe around 2 fingers, dip it into your paint pot, and I lightly dip mine. I got a little bit too much, so I'm just gonna kind of wipe that off, the excess off onto my box. And then I'm just gonna work fairly quickly and check where the direction of the wood grain is going. So this is going this way. That's not imperative. It will just go on smoother. And then just wipe it to paint. When you use the baby wipe, it's gonna give it that stained look, and it's going to, you're gonna be able to see the wood grain through it, versus when we use the wedge, it puts a lot of paint down and it makes it solid. So while this is still wet, if you want a lighter brown, take the clean end of your baby wipe and wipe in the same direction. Do you see the difference? And again, that's if you wanted a lighter brown, and you need to do it fairly quickly before the paint really dries on there. Now, if you decide, actually, I want a darker brown, wait for this to dry and then just wipe it again. And it's just going to lay down more paint and become darker as you do it. So let's do our pie crust. On these little pieces, just be really careful. You don't need to be pushing down hard because you don't want to snap. It's pretty fragile. And so I'm just gonna lightly run I don't want to snap it. And I set them aside as I go. Same with the fork tongs. I don't want to snap those. So any piece that is small or skinny or fragile, then you just want to take a little more care. I'm not pressing down hard at all. I'm just working fairly quickly. Most important thing is to get the clean end if you want to do this. You can also sand it. I lightly run a piece of sandpaper over my pieces anyways to distress them a little bit. And so that is also going to bring some of the color up. So don't, if it ends up being a little bit darker than you want, don't panic because, oh, Charlie, my dogs are in here and it's a cold day. So they've been sleeping all day. And so he's groaning. I don't know why, because he has a hard life, I guess. Okay, normally I just show you a couple pieces so that you don't get too bored of just watching me do the same thing over and over, but I don't have very many, there's not very many brown pieces. So once I'm done with this, then I will show you how to use the wedge, and then I'm gonna press pause and finish up. Okay, and then the pie crust. Sometimes it's easier to just hold it in my hand. Okay, so that is the stain technique. So do that with any of the colors that you don't want completely painted and you just want the stain look. Now I'm going to show you the wedge technique. It's best if you wash your hands at this point so that you don't transfer the paint, but I'm just going to show you one piece and then I'll press pause while we finish painting because it's the same technique over and over and over. So let me find a wedge. I'm going to show you on this piece. So press pause if I went too fast, and then when you're ready to do the cream color, then come back on here. So I'm going to show you this piece because it will have pretty much, Charlie, all the techniques that you're going to need on there. So again, yours is, oops, in the paint pot. There's a lot of snow coming down right now. Okay, so for the cream color, take a large wedge. You know, I think yep, all of them are large, so it doesn't matter. Just take a wedge. So you're going to dip it into it will be in your paint pot. And then what you're going to do is dab up and down on a clean part of your cardboard because you don't want too much paint on your wedge. If you have too much right at the beginning, you're gonna flood these etched lines and you're not gonna be able to it's gonna be harder to get the paint out. So you just want light paint. And then I always start like on a solid piece. I'm not gonna immediately press down on this because I want these letters to stay dark. So I'm gonna start here. I think I talked too long and so now my paint is dry. So it dries that quickly because I dab most of the paint off. So I'm gonna start on a solid part and I am dabbing so light up and down, and then I'm going to lightly move over the etched letters and the shiplap sign. So when you're using these wedges, plan on doing 2, maybe 3 coats of paint because it will just look so much nicer if you do light coats versus one super heavy coat. So this for the pie, it is just an etch to help you guide to put it down, so that doesn't matter if you get paint in there. And then let's say you do happen to get paint. Let's say I got paint in here. Okay, so as you can see, I just got paint in this shiplap line. While the paint is still wet, I'm gonna take the toothpick that I packed for you and just drag it along, and now the paint is gone. So if it's too rustic, if you're getting too much paint in there, then go ahead and just drag the toothpick through. And you can do that with these letters. Like, as you can see, it's still dark, but I'm getting a little bit of, I don't know if you can see on here, a little bit of paint in there, especially on these littler ones. So I plan on going through on my last go around and kind of clearing them out with that toothpick. So slow and steady is the key with this painting technique. So just put on like a Netflix show or a podcast or an audiobook and start painting. So I did that piece. As you can tell, it's like really splotchy. I don't know if you can tell because the lighting is so bad. It's super splotchy, and that's fine because I'm gonna come back and do a second coat. I like to take the piece of sandpaper that I sent and very, very lightly sand it in between my coat. So once this is completely dry, I'm going to very lightly sand it, just because when you paint, the wood grain is going to raise. The moisture just pulls it up. And so if you lightly sand it, it's an extra step, but it's gonna give you a really nice smooth finish. So of course that's completely optional. I wanted to show you, if this is your first box, you get a pair of these blue tweezers, and I ask that you keep them just because they are reusable. If you end up losing them, you can always request another pair in another box, but these just make it nice. They're optional. They're not like required at all. But it makes it nice to kind of help keep your fingers clean. I just pinch. You don't want to hold it. You don't want to do anything. I just kind of pinch to hold it down so that when I'm painting these smaller pieces, they're not bouncing up at me. Because like if I went to paint it, it's going to come up. And that is very annoying. So, okay, I'm going to push pause. And I'm gonna finish painting. This is the same technique for the orange pieces, for the black pieces. Just use a new wedge for each color. As I'm going along, if I remember a tip that I did not tell you, then I will come back on here. Otherwise, I'm going to finish painting everything to, you know what? I lied. The white pieces I'm gonna paint twice, just because the white is harder to cover. But the orange and the black, I'm only gonna paint one coat because I'm distressing my kit so that it looks, let me grab like this piece, for instance. I distressed around the frame and I distressed the pie just because it gives it a nice rustic look. If you don't want it to be distressed, then you wanna do at least 2 coats of every color. But if you are distressing it, I would only do 1 coat of the orange and 1 coat of the black so that you're not sanding your arms off. So I will finish that and then I will come back when it's time to sand and put everything together. Okay, it is the next day because life just got crazy last night. I don't know if the lighting is better or worse today, but it's just dreary outside. Okay, so where we ended up, I had done for the cream color, I did 2 coats on the tag, on the back of the tag, and on the back of this, because since it's a larger area, it took a couple coats just to give it mostly a full covering. But on the smaller pieces, like this piece, the words, and the little whipped creams, I only did 1 coat because I felt like that was enough, because again, I'm planning on distressing them. So I didn't want to have to sand too much. So I'm gonna show you how to put the pieces together, just in case this is your first tier tray kit. So let's start with a simple piece. Let's start with our cutting board. If you want to distress the back of the cutting board, if you wanted it lighter, then go ahead and do that now. I'm gonna go ahead and leave mine how it is. The back of every piece has this adhesive backing on it. If you're like an OG DIY member, you were using super glue for like the past 1.5 years. This is so much cleaner. It's so much faster. You're not peeling super glue off your skin every day for a week. So I recommended in my Facebook group a pair of these sharp tweezers. I linked some on a post in there. If you can't find it and you want some, then go ahead and ask me and I can tag you in that post. You can peel them with your fingernail. I'm wearing glue-on fingernails right now, so it's making it a little bit more difficult. So you can peel them, but if you plan on doing several kits, I recommend buying a pair of these sharper tweezers just because it makes it go so much faster. So once you peel it, you can feel how sticky it is. You're gonna use the guide. I etched some lines in there for you. How I like to line it up is I line up this bottom corner with this bottom corner, and then I just make sure that it's straight along and then press down. Once you press down, it's stuck. It's gonna take some cutting and possibly ruining your pieces to get it off. So only press down when you're ready. And then I'll show you, for instance, if I set it down to try to place it, let's say there wasn't the etched guide, if you just barely place it down, you have some wiggle room. You can move things around, but once you put any force whatsoever, it is where hopefully it's meant to be. Grateful. And then once this piece is in, actually no, I was like gonna say then we tie a ribbon, but first what I'm gonna do with this kit, it came with rougher sandpaper because mine was distressed. I wanted it to look a little bit more rustic. So this is a lot more coarse because it's meant to take paint up. Most of your other kits I send you with a finer sandpaper so that you can just smooth it so it looks nice and even. This is meant to bring paint up. So I always recommend using a light hand because you can always go back and sand more off, but if you take too much off, you're gonna have to go back and repaint some of them. So another tip is I like to use each corner for a different color. So like I'm gonna sand all my white pieces. I'm gonna try to keep it somewhat in this area. The black one's here and the orange one here. And you can tear off as you go, but that's just gonna make it so that you're not transferring color. White is really the most important one because if I sanded my black pieces and then I try to sand it with my white, it could deposit color. And I didn't distress my white pieces too much because, oh, and this is going to make a mess if you sand, which I'm sure you know. This room is just full of dust. So I didn't sand my white pieces too much just because it's not going to make a huge difference. It's mostly for the other other colors. So I used my thicker ribbon for the cutting board. You can use this one I used on this little tag. So I don't really have any rhyme or reason. I just tied around the neck of the cutting board. Hi, Macy. My dogs are gonna go in and out. I think I did a knot. Maybe I didn't. I'm trying to remember. I did the example over a week ago, so I'm trying to remember if I did the full knot, maybe, so that it would stay. I don't know. No, that's too bulky. So I just tied it one time. And then if you want it to stay, like if yours is coming undone, then go ahead and place, like you can place some like hot glue or something, but mine has stayed. And then I trimmed mine. You can keep it however you want, but I kept mine about the same width as my cutting board. There we go. You can do like a little decorative edge if you want to, like boop, boop, so that it's divoted. But then this piece is all done. I'm just gonna set it off to the side. Let's do this one next because then I can show you, oops, I can show you how I knotted my, just in case you haven't done it before, how I knotted the string through. this little circle piece, you don't have to add it if you don't want to. Sometimes I don't even include it with my kits because I don't feel like it needs it. Oh, you know what I did? I did not distress the back of this. You want to distress before you put down any pieces. Good thing it was the white color because you can't really, you mostly focus on the ends anyways. That's good. Okay, so these little pieces, I like to adhere them down. I almost said glue, but it's not gluing. I adhere them down before I distress them just because it is, they're a lot more fragile. And when you're sanding, it's easy to break these little pieces. So when you adhere them down, sorry, I'm making sure I'm inside the edge, then it just gives it a little bit more stability. You still want to be careful, but it's more likely to not break. And again, I usually just pick like an end to line it up with, and then just make sure it's in the etching before I press down. There's probably lots of background noise in my house. You can hear my kids just got home from church and my dogs are in and out. And if I don't film these tutorials when everyone's at school or work, then it's just normal home life around here. So I'm going to go ahead and go on like this corner for the black piece. And again, I'm just going to gently, I'm going to go one way because if I go back and forth, I'm more likely to rip off one of the small pieces, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to sand one way. And then we have this piece is done. Okay, so how I did my ribbon, you can tie it however you want. I take it and I fold it in half, and then I take this, the end piece, which mine is all twisted up. And then I'm going to kind of bunch it up so that I can push it through this hole, pull it through, and then I just kind of open up that hole and then put both of these through. And that's it. It just gives it a little bit of a little knot on the top. Sorry, there's so many shadows. It's such a gloomy day. I don't have very much natural light. And then you can trim it as if you wanted it to be smaller. I like mine looking like that, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave that. And then that's pretty much how we're going to do every piece. The banner, once you do, I just didn't do the very top just because I already knew that I was going to cover that. So that's why mine looked like that. I'll show you one piece on here. I'm going to use a clean corner for the orange. Then you're going to put, just remember to distress before you put anything down. I line the edges and make sure that the holes, these two holes are lining up because that's how you're going to string your banner. And whipped cream. And then once you get all 5, I just take my twine. I didn't cut any right now, otherwise I would show you. I put a piece of Scotch tape around the end so that the twine doesn't, I wonder, let me press pause and go cut some twine real quick. Okay, so get the twine that your thing came with. This is double-sided tape, so I don't know if it will work. I think my kids took my normal Scotch tape and for like a project because it is not where it always is. So you just want a little piece of Scotch tape. This is just gonna make your life easier when you're stringing anything to do with twine. And then just wrap it around the end so that it gives it like a sharp area. Otherwise your twine is going to fray and it's going to be really annoying. And then oh, this is I'm like, I must have cut off a too small piece. Yours will be much longer than this. And then that's how I do it. You can, if you like the look of seeing the twine, then make sure that you go from the back over the front. Either way, there is no right or wrong way. It just depends on whatever look you're going for. So once all of your banner is done, string all the pieces through, and then that's just a little banner. I forgot to mention earlier, for this piece, you want to paint front and back. And then I distress both sides because it's just gonna slide together like so. It's a tight fit so that it can sit like that. And so if you only paint one side, all my other pieces, I do not paint the back because you're not going to see them. So, oh, I also forgot to mention on this piece, let me distress it so I can show you. Distressing is optional, especially with these white pieces. Okay. As I distressed, I got some in there. As you can see, like there was a little bit, I mean, looking back, you really can't tell. But if you look close, you can see how there a little bit of paint like got in the pumpkin. It wasn't this bad on pie, but when I distressed it, more came off. Anyways, if it bothers you, if you like it because it looks homemade, it just gives it kind of some dimension, then go ahead and leave it. But if you don't, take your toothpick and just go through and kind of basically line. And you can see, I don't know, maybe you can't even tell a difference, but it just clears that paint out. You want to do this at the end. With the shiplap lines, you want to go along as you're painting because when it's wet is when it will clear out. But these etched letters, you're going to want to do that at the very end. Otherwise, it will just kind of stain the etching. I can go into the logistics of why, or just trust me. So you can kind of see that difference that it makes. So do that before you glue your pieces down. It will just make it, I guess you technically could. It just makes it a little bit easier to clean away once you're done. So same thing, distress the back of this, then put these down and the frame, and then go ahead and distress the pieces if you want. Be really, really careful with your leaf stem. Other than that, I think this has already gone pretty long. If you have any specific questions about a specific piece, or if you want it filmed or described in more detail, please reach out to me. I'm always happy to give more information for whoever needs it. So I hope you enjoyed your kits.